You idiots. You morons. You imbeciles. Kamala Harris? Really? That's who you threw up there?
There are so many loony left-wing people on the internet, but this leftist YouTuber actually kind of gets it. Now for our main topic today, we're going to break down some highlights from a video that's doing the rounds and getting millions of views by the left-wing political YouTuber ShoeOnHead, with whom I disagree about almost everything, but I actually thought she had some really fascinating insights into why Democrats lost so horribly in the election and why left-wing politics are just struggling and faltering in America right now. She's also just really funny.
My home state, New York, was closer to flipping red than Florida was to flipping blue. Turns out Dick Cheney as Brat wasn't the best message to win over voters. Dems did so bad it really had me thinking, damn, did we steal that election?
You see, ShoeOnHead is very much a Bernie Sanders style progressive, a left-winger, but she jokes about stuff and she isn't politically correct. She doesn't get triggered. In fact, she thinks it's funny to laugh about very serious things, and she's just eminently more interesting and relatable than a lot of the hypersensitive liberal political commentators you'll find on the internet. She's also not a loyalist to the DNC, so she's willing to speak about her own side with a frankly refreshing degree of honesty, like she did in this clip about the Harris-Walz campaign.
You idiots. You morons. You imbeciles. Kamala Harris? Really? That's who you threw up there? The one who dropped out before Iowa? The one who got blown the f out by Tulsi Gabbard? Why didn't you hold a primary? Aren't you the f***ing saviors of democracy? Where the f was the democracy? Oh, big congratulations to Tim Walz on being the first white male DEI hire. It didn't f***ing work. The DNC completely neutered that f***ing guy, reduced him to this weird token white man. Hello, fellow men, I too play football. But hey, men weren't the only demographic you completely dropped the ball with. Trump made incredible gains with women, too. Oh, and all those never-Trumpers you tried to court, the people who like the old, respectable GOP? You know, the old, respectable GOP that led us into a pointless war that cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives, but were at least nice on Twitter. That GOP. Yeah, they didn't come out and vote for your ass either. So you got Liz Cheney to tag along for what? For f***ing what?
I'm sorry, but she's spitting facts! Kamala was always an incredibly bad candidate, but once they gave her the nomination in, yes, a very undemocratic process, ironically for the Democratic Party, who spent years talking about how much they stand for democracy, they acted like she was actually great, and like all of recent history didn't happen. Like Kamala didn't run for president in 2020 and bomb and fail terribly. Like she hadn't committed so many gaffes and errors, and she wasn't a historically unpopular vice president. Like she didn't cackle randomly like a hyena at unpredictable and inappropriate times. They just tried to wipe the memory board clean and start again as if, oh, she's this profound political talent, but we all knew that wasn't true. And I laugh when she said that Tim Walz was the first white dude DEI hire, because they really did just pick a white guy who they thought was like normal and could appeal to men and then tell him like, do men things, talk about football. Like they put out all these ads calling him coach. And look, he did coach high school football for a few years, but that was literally decades ago. It ended in 2002. So going around calling him coach is just weird. And it obviously came off as incredibly manufactured and inauthentic, which is a huge part of Democrats' problems as far as the Democratic establishment is concerned. They come off as incredibly slimy and fake and inauthentic. And Trump, you can say a lot of things about him, but he is authentic for sure. And it's absolutely true, as ShoeOnHead notes, that the Kamala Harris strategy of appealing to moderate Republicans, by which she really means like these ultra hawkish neoconservative Liz Cheney types, didn't work because it's not like there was a significant base in 2024 of Republicans who still love Liz Cheney that you could appeal to, and it only further alienated her actual progressive supporters that she was palling around with like people who still simp for the Iraq war. And it all actually played into Trump's hands because he could point to Kamala and Liz Cheney campaigning together and say, look, both sides of the establishment are against me. That's how you know I'm fighting for you. And it really did kind of suit him that she took this approach. It was all just a political disaster class. The Democratic strategists behind the Kamala Harris campaign should go down in history for how not to do their jobs. We're going to get into so much more, but first let's pause and take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor. So you guys know it's been really hard for me over the last couple months since my dog Reggie passed away. Well, I decided that I wanted to start donating to animal rights advocacy in his memory, which is why I'm so glad I'm partnered with today's sponsor, Bono. Donating to charity can feel really overwhelming. Who do I donate to? What impact is my money having? That's where Bono comes in. It's an amazing new easy, smart, and transparent digital service that helps you donate with no service fee to the causes you care about and gives you impact updates in a social media style feed. You just choose a cause to help solve, set up a monthly donation plan starting from $5, and that's it. Plus, all your donations are in one easily manageable location. Decide when you want to donate more or less, and all your tax-deductible receipts are available in one place no matter how many charities you're giving to. In 2 weeks, I'm going to do an update and see how many meals for the hungry, how many farm animals rescued, and how many meals for veterans' families we've been able to fundraise for as the Brad vs. Everyone community. So click the link in the description or use the QR code on screen, plus my promo code BRAD to receive $5 towards your first donation with Bono, but only for the first 50 people that go ahead and take advantage of it. And once you set up your profile, you'll get $5 to send to a friend for their first donation. There's no better time to start giving than with Giving Tuesday coming up this Tuesday, so check out Bono today. You'll be glad you did. It was also something of a financial and economic calamity, as ShoeOnHead went on to point out.
You raised $1 billion and ended up $20 million in debt? Where the hell did all that money go? Maybe you should have blown it all on celebrity appearances that did nothing. Or maybe it was spending 6 figures on a single-use set for the Call Her Daddy podcast that didn't even hit 1 million views. I want to see a full audit of this campaign, because I wouldn't be surprised if this was all like a big money laundering scheme, because honestly, that makes more sense than this being a legitimate presidential campaign. Then, they had the audacity to beg their supporters for money after she lost. How about you? How about every DNC consultant should have this map sewn onto the inside of their eyelids? May they never have a peaceful wink of sleep for the rest of their miserable lives.
Wow, she's really quite something. I can see why she's popular and people like tuning into her videos, but the point here she raises is a completely valid one. Despite all their years of complaining about money in politics and accusing Republicans of buying elections through billionaires and all this stuff, which sometimes has a grain of truth to it, but is often overwrought and hyperbolic, Democrats massively outraised Republicans this election cycle. Kamala had way more cash on hand in her campaign than Trump did, massively outspent him, yet still lost horribly. There should be a comprehensive audit and serious introspection into how that money was spent. Now, some of the celebrity stuff looks bad in hindsight, but it's ultimately kind of small ticket as a percentage of the total budget. But I think it's more that it sends a message about the approach the campaign probably took across the board. It's not that wasting $100,000 on a podcast set doesn't make the difference when you're talking about spending $1 billion. Of course not. That is a rounding error, but it does tell you something about the fiscal approach of the campaign that probably bled through to many things they did. So I imagine that as more information comes out about how they spent their money, it will look worse and worse and worse for the Harris campaign. And Democratic supporters and voters have every right to feel aggrieved about that. And I completely understand ShoeOnHead's frustration that now they're asking for money still after they lost. Yeah, I too would tell them to loudly F off. But then again, I wouldn't give any of these people my money in the first place. I also find Trump's fundraising texts, which they send me even though I've never ever donated to him, incredibly annoying and like kind of unhinged sometimes. Political fundraising just broadly is an absolute shit show. And if you have extra money to give, there are so many better places to give it. Now, my favorite part of the ShoeOnHead video was where she absolutely savaged a widespread liberal media talking point we're hearing right now, which is something to the effect of, the left needs their own Joe Rogan. Shoe pointed out how absurd it is to make this claim. Take a listen.
Oh my God, we need a liberal Joe Rogan. You had a liberal Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan, but he was too edgy, too problematic, said too many no-no words, talked to too many no-no people about no-no topics, and in 2020, when Bernie Sanders went on his podcast and Joe endorsed him, the Democrat journalist class freaked the out and smeared him for weeks. The left can't have a Joe Rogan, because everything that makes Joe Rogan, is not allowed on the left. Kamala Harris ditched Joe Rogan podcast interview over progressive backlash fears. So Joe Rogan was too problematic? But Liz Cheney was fine? Listen, you don't need a leftist Joe Rogan or liberal Joe Rogan. You just need leftists and liberals to go on Joe Rogan. And that means not giving a shit about being canceled by your own movement.
Yeah, she's exactly right here. And I don't know that it would have made the difference, but it will go down in infamy as one of the biggest campaign cell phones of all time that Kamala Harris was extended the invitation to do the full 3-hour sit down on Joe Rogan and declined. In part because it's been reported of fears that her progressive young staff would get mad at her because Joe Rogan is too problematic. That's it. That's it in the nutshell. Everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party, passing up the chance to speak to the modern-day Walter Cronkite with an audience bigger than all the cable news stations combined because some woke they-thems on your staff might have their fifis hurt because he sometimes talks to people who say things that hurt their feelings. This is pitiful political thinking and strategy. And yes, it is true. Joe Rogan was originally a Bernie bro. He was very much of the left. He was a liberal, but because he pushed back on some of the crazier trans activism and because he talked to people with different opinions, the far left viciously turned on him. They repeatedly tried to revolt and get him canceled and deplatformed at Spotify and so much more. And guess what? He ultimately ended up endorsing Trump and moving over towards the Republican side, though he's still an independent thinker in many ways, because one side hates him and attacked him. So y'all are now saying, well, if we only had our own liberal Joe Rogan, you literally did, and you scared him away. As we've covered extensively on this show, some of the establishment class seems to be using the old excuses, sexism, racism, blah, 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 and just learning the wrong lessons from this election. But some people, like ShoeOnHead, do actually have at least something of a correct interpretation of the state of current American politics and how a Democratic Party could succeed. If they ran an economically populist, culturally moderate, and not insufferably woke candidate, they would be an electoral force to be reckoned with. Now, I would still disagree with them on most policy issues. I think a lot of the populist policies that appeal to voters sound great in theory, but in practice are deeply harmful. But just on a political messaging point, Shoe's diagnosis of the Democrats is entirely correct. A lot of normies in the comments do seem to get it, and her video is going viral online. But will the Democratic political class and fundraisers and strategists actually change? I highly, highly doubt it. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Do hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed.